Okay, so first step when graphing these is to look for what transformations take place. So on 1/2 cosine of theta minus 1, we aren't multiplying by any negatives, so we don't have any reflections to worry about. The amplitude is always that number in front of the trig function, whatever is multiplying it. So in this case, our amplitude will be 1/2, and then our vertical shift is whatever is adding and subtracting outside of the trig function, so meaning outside of any parentheses that could be there. So in this case, we have a vertical shift of -1, which means we are moving down 1. So we can set up our graph. No matter if it's sine or cosine, we can set up kind of our 3 layers, our top, middle, and our bottom. So if our vertical shift is down 1, that means the new middle of our graph is at -1. So we're going to put a dotted line there to represent that we know that's where the middle of our graph is going to be. From there, we use the amplitude. We know the amplitude is only 1/2, so that means the top of our graph will be 1/2 above that -1. The bottom of the graph will be 1/2 below that -1. So if we're labeling these, we know -1 is the middle. This would be -1.5 for the bottom, -1/2 for the top. The other labels we need to make sure we have are x-axis labels. For now, we haven't done any shifts on those. We know it starts at 0, then goes 90, 180, 270, 360. So now we just use the pattern of our graph. We're graphing 1/2 cosine minus 1. So if you think off to the side, a cosine graph starts at the top, goes down to the middle, bottom, middle, top. That's what a normal cosine looks like. So it's going to be the same here at the 0 point. We're going to start at the top. At 90, we're going to go down to the middle, 180 to the bottom, 270 back to the middle, 360 to the top. And then we just connect our dots, draw our graph. So again, you want to make sure you have those points clearly on here. I need to see that this point, 90, -1 is there, 180, -1.5. We have 270, -1, and 360, -1/2. Those points need to be obvious. If you just have a squiggle roughly around that area, you will not get full credit as you do these problems. Okay, for this next one, 3 + 2 sine of theta. So first thing, check all of our transformations. There is no reflection because there are no negatives being multiplied anywhere. Amplitude is the number right in front of the trig function. So our amplitude is going to be 2. The vertical shift is anything being added or subtracted to the trig function. So this time it's a +3, which means we are moving up 3. The first part, we use that vertical shift, find out where the middle of our graph is. Up 3 means the new middle of our graph will be at 3. And then an amplitude of 2 means the top of the graph will be 2 above that. Up at 5, the bottom of the graph will be 2 below at 1. Now you have your template. It's just a matter of using the sine function and its pattern to graph it. So we know a sine function starts in the middle, goes up to the top, middle, bottom, middle. So again, knowing that basic function is going to be how you graph it. Add our tick marks to the x-axis. And everything we've been doing so far operates in 360 degrees. So half of that is 180, half of that is 90, then 270. Sine starts in the middle, so at 0 you're up at 0 you're up at 3, and then 90 to 5, 180 back to 3, 270 down to 1, 360 up to 0. So once you set this template up based on the transformations, you're just following that pattern. Okay, last one in here. -2 minus cosine of theta. So first we look for the reflection. Since that cosine is being multiplied by a negative, essentially it's a negative cosine, that means yes, there is a reflection. And what that does to the graph, normally cosine starts at the top and kind of opens down. Due to the reflection, it means it's going to start at the bottom and then move its way up. So it's going to change that starting point for our cosine. Next is our amplitude. Again, the number in front of the cosine, since there isn't a number there, assume a 1, so that means our amplitude is 1. And then lastly, for the vertical shift, it's the number being added or subtracted. Vertical shift of -2 means we are moving down 2. So now we just need to set up our template and graph our cosine pattern. So vertical shift down 2 means the new middle of our graph is at -2. An amplitude of 1 means the bottom of our graph will be 1 below that middle, so -3. The top of our graph will be 1 above, so at -1. Now we just put our x-axis markers in there. 90, 180, 270, 360. We're graphing a negative cosine, so negative cosine starts at the bottom, so at 0 will be at -3. Then it goes up 1 to the middle, up another to the top, back to the middle, back to the bottom. Connect your dots, and you have your graph.